Buongiorno. Good morning, and thank you for this wonderful reception. They say when they clap at the beginning, it doesn't matter much. If you're still awake at the end and you still want to applaud, thank you very much.
Just moments ago, the newly elected Pope, Robert Francis Prevost, made a statement that has left millions of Christians around the world in complete shock. It wasn't just another papal address. It was something far bigger, bolder, and deeply unexpected. As his words echoed through St. Peter's Square, you could almost feel the world holding its breath. Social media lit up instantly. Some people are cheering, others are confused, even heartbroken. Many are simply trying to make sense of it all. Theologians, pastors, and believers from every corner of the globe are scrambling to understand what this could mean for the future of the Church and of Christianity itself. We're still processing it ourselves. One thing's clear: Pope Prevost isn't wasting any time making his mark. But what exactly did he say? And why is the entire religious world suddenly on edge?
I'll begin with a word in English, and the rest is in Italian. But I want to repeat the words from the responsorial psalm. I will sing a new song to the Lord because he has done marvels. And indeed, not just with me, but with all of us.
Before the world started calling him Pope, Robert Francis Prevost was already a name quietly shaping the future of the Catholic Church. Born in Chicago in 1955, Prevost joined the Augustinian order and spent years as a missionary in Peru, eventually serving as the Bishop of Chiclayo. His deep connection with Latin America, combined with his American roots, gave him a unique cross-cultural perspective that resonated within the global church. In 2023, Pope Francis appointed him as prefect of the dicastery for bishops, one of the most influential roles in the Vatican, where he oversaw the selection and supervision of bishops around the world. That role put him at the heart of church reform, and he quickly earned a reputation as a thoughtful, reform-minded leader who valued transparency, accountability, and pastoral compassion. Despite being seen as progressive in many ways, Prevost has always remained doctrinally grounded, someone who doesn't shake tradition lightly, yet isn't afraid to ask hard questions. Colleagues have called him a bridge builder and a calm but courageous voice in a noisy world. The election of Robert Francis Prevost as the new pope came after a moment of deep reflection and uncertainty within the Catholic Church. Following the peaceful passing of Pope Francis at the age of 88, the world turned its eyes once again to the Sistine Chapel, where 120 cardinals gathered in the solemn conclave to choose the next spiritual leader of over 1.3 billion Catholics. Many expected familiar names from Europe or Africa to emerge. Instead, to the surprise of Vatican watchers and the global faithful alike, the cardinals cast their votes for a quiet but respected figure, Robert Francis Prevost. His election was not so much a political victory as it was a sign of the Church's desire for balance, tradition anchored in compassion, and reform rooted in spiritual integrity. What made Prevost stand out was his rare blend of backgrounds. American-born and fluent in Spanish, he had spent decades working in Latin America, earning the respect of communities across cultural and theological lines. He understood both the developed and developing church, and his time as prefect of the dicastery for bishops proved he could lead with both pastoral heart and administrative clarity. Upon his election, the world expected a gentle ceremonial address from the newly elected Pope Robert Francis Prevost. Something traditional, perhaps a message of unity or humility. What they got instead was a bold, history-making proclamation that left even the most seasoned Vatican journalists stunned. Standing on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica for his first public address as Pope, Prevost spoke in calm, measured tones. But the message he delivered was anything but ordinary. "If we are to follow Christ authentically," he began, "we must ask hard questions, not just about the world, but about ourselves. The Church cannot remain silent on matters where silence causes pain. We must revisit how we welcome, how we lead, and how we love." With that, Pope Prevost launched into a series of sweeping reforms that signaled a clear departure from business as usual. He spoke of the urgent need to re-examine priestly celibacy, especially in areas suffering from a shortage of clergy. We must consider whether we are denying the church vital shepherds simply because we have not questioned a tradition that once served a different time. Then came a moment many called unprecedented. The Pope called for a global commission to explore LGBTQ+ inclusion within the church. No person created in God's image, he said firmly, should ever feel unwelcome at his table. In a move that surprised both conservatives and progressives, Pope Robert Francis Prevost reaffirmed the traditional Catholic teaching that marriage is between a man and a woman, but did so in a way that emphasized both truth and compassion. Speaking during a Vatican press conference following his inaugural address, he stated, "The Church upholds the sacred bond of marriage as a union between a man and a woman, open to life and rooted in love. This teaching remains unchanged." However, what followed marked a departure from the tone of previous declarations. The Pope continued, "While we honor this truth, we must also recognize and accompany those whose lives and relationships fall outside this teaching. They are not strangers. They are part of our family, and they deserve dignity, respect, and care."
There's been a development in the sense of the need for the church to open and to be welcoming. And on that level, I think Pope Francis made it very clear that he doesn't want people to be excluded simply on the basis of choices that they make, whether it be lifestyle, work, way to dress, or whatever. Doctrine hasn't changed, and people haven't said yet, we're looking for that kind of change, but we are looking to be more welcoming and more open, and to say all people are welcome in the church.
His comments did not signal a change in doctrine, but reflected a shift in pastoral tone, a clear effort to draw a distinction between affirming church teaching and excluding individuals. Rather than condemning, Pope Prevost called for listening and walking with people in real-life situations. In doing so, he opened the door to broader conversations about inclusion without abandoning the Church's long-held understanding of sacramental marriage. The stance of the new Pope on this issue of marriage is a far cry from that of the former Pope. Therefore, the transition from Pope Francis to Pope Robert Francis Prevost represents more than just a change in leadership. It signals a potential shift in the very posture of the Catholic Church. Pope Francis, known for his humility and emphasis on mercy, opened long closed doors to dialogue within the Church. His approach to reform was cautious and pastoral. On topics like priestly celibacy and LGBTQ+ inclusion, he encouraged discussion, but stopped short of structural change. His now famous words, "Who am I to judge?" captured a spirit of openness, but traditional teachings largely remained intact. He believed reform should come gradually, through listening and discernment. Pope Prevost, on the other hand, has entered the papacy with a striking sense of urgency, and in his first public address, he not only acknowledged the Church's internal struggles, but laid out specific reforms. He called for a formal re-examination of priestly celibacy, signaling a willingness to adapt long-standing practices in light of pastoral needs. Most notably, he announced the formation of a global commission on LGBTQ+ inclusion, declaring that no person created in God's image should ever feel unwelcome at his table. He also proposed shared worship and service missions with leaders of other faiths, a step beyond interfaith dialogue. While Pope Francis planted seeds of reform, Pope Prevost seems ready to cultivate them boldly. His stance is not just pastoral, but transformational, marked by direct action rather than cautious dialogue. Theologically grounded yet reform-minded, he reflects a church unafraid to ask hard questions, even of itself. In short, Pope Francis sought to gently guide the Church through change, while Pope Prevost appears ready to lead it through a defining moment. Liberal Catholics and progressive Christian groups have offered mixed reactions to Pope Robert Francis Prevost's reaffirmation that marriage is between a man and a woman. While some expressed disappointment that the doctrine remains unchanged, many were struck by the Pope's tone of compassion and openness. Unlike previous declarations, which some viewed as harsh or exclusionary, Prevost's remarks were seen as pastoral, recognizing the humanity and dignity of those in same-sex relationships without directly condemning them. Liberal theologians praised his willingness to acknowledge LGBTQ+ individuals as part of the Church's family. It may not be the doctrinal shift we hoped for, But it's a significant shift in language, and language matters, said one progressive Jesuit scholar. Activists highlighted his call to accompany rather than judge, seeing it as an invitation to deeper dialogue rather than outright rejection. Some, however, remain cautious. Critics within the liberal wing worry that kindness without policy change could still leave LGBTQ+ Catholics marginalized in practice. Yet, overall, many agree that Pope Prevost has created space for hope, a signal that while the Church may not yet be ready to redefine marriage, it may finally be ready to treat everyone involved with grace, dignity, and a willingness to listen. In the wake of Pope Prevost's groundbreaking statement, the Vatican is preparing for a whirlwind of activity. Sources close to the Holy See indicate that a global synod is likely to be convened within the next few months. This assembly of bishops, theologians, and lay representatives will be tasked with addressing the immediate fallout and exploring the proposed reforms in detail. There's also growing pressure for a formal doctrinal review to clarify the Church's official stance on priestly celibacy and LGBTQ+ inclusion. Many expect this to culminate in an encyclical or apostolic exhortation that will set the tone for the Church's direction moving forward.
It's not just a given that because in society women are recognized, well, a woman can be president or a woman can have many different kinds of roles of leadership in the world. It's not like there's an immediate parallel to say in the Church, therefore, and that our categories, I think, and the life of the Church are different, need to be different, but it isn't as simple as saying that, at this stage we're going to change, if you will, the tradition of the Church after 2,000 years. Clericalizing women doesn't necessarily solve a problem. It might make a new problem. We need to look at a new understanding or different understanding of both leadership, power, authority, and service by women and men.
In one of the most watched moments of his early papacy, Pope Robert Francis Prevost addressed the long-debated issue of women in the Church, and his words ignited a wave of hope, debate, and controversy around the world. While reaffirming the Church's teaching that priestly ordination remains reserved for men, he emphasized the urgent need to expand women's roles in leadership, theology, and decision-making at every level of Church life. He announced plans to elevate more women to positions within the Roman Curia and diocesan leadership structures, and hinted at the possibility of revisiting the diaconate for women, a topic that has sparked intense theological debate over the years. Reactions to his remarks were swift and varied. Many Catholic women's groups and progressive theologians welcomed the Pope's tone and proposals, calling them steps in the right direction after decades of exclusion from decision-making. Social media lit up with praise from women who felt finally seen by the Church they love. However, some traditionalists were uneasy, fearing that such openness could eventually lead to doctrinal overreach. Others criticized the Pope for not going far enough, arguing that without women's ordination, true equality remains out of reach. Despite the polarization, many agree that Pope Prevost's comments marked a pivotal shift in tone and intent. By emphasizing dignity, visibility, and participation for women, he has set a precedent for a more inclusive vision of Catholic leadership, one that seeks not to overturn doctrine, but to reflect more deeply the equal worth and spiritual authority of all members of the Church. In the coming weeks, Pope Prevost is expected to embark on a historic pastoral tour, visiting key dioceses in Latin America, Europe, and Africa to engage directly with the faithful and bishops, build consensus, and demonstrate that his vision is both pastoral and practical. One thing is clear: this papacy will be defined by bold action, and the world will be watching closely. Pope Robert Francis Prevost's dramatic first steps as leader of the Catholic Church mark an unprecedented moment in Christian history. His bold call for reform challenges centuries-old traditions and asks believers worldwide to reconsider what faith, inclusion, and leadership truly mean today. As reactions swirl and the Church grapples with these seismic shifts, one question looms large. Is Christianity on the brink of a profound transformation that renews its relevance and compassion? Or is it heading toward deep turmoil and division? Whatever the future holds, one thing is certain: the era of quiet tradition has ended, and a new chapter has begun. What do you think about this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.